Welcome back to r/neighbors from hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors, and if you are new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community, and without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. The first one is titled, "Neighbor Throws a Pool Party on My Property, I Get Epic IRS Revenge." My neighbor and I are on what you might call opposite ends of the spectrum. I spent 35 years working very hard and saving money before getting to retire. It was difficult, but I am grateful that with my good pension and decision-making skills financially, I am able to have a nice house that even has a pool in the backyard. It is the kind of life that I dreamed of having after living with my parents and 3 siblings in a 1-bedroom apartment growing up. It was basically the goal, and I love the fact that I was able to achieve that. My neighbor though seems like a different type of guy. He seems to be a little bit younger than me, but has the mentality of wanting to get rich quick and blow the money he has right away. I will say that despite not liking the neighbor, I actually know quite a bit about him because he likes to talk a lot and brag. I don't know what his business actually is, but I do know that once he told me that he knows a way to get around paying taxes for his business, and if he wants he can help look at my finances and see if he can get me out of them too. I declined very quickly because I did not want to get in trouble for not paying my taxes. It was easier to just pay them like most people and get on with my life. He also on a few occasions asked if I was interested in buying any of the drugs that he was selling. I never knew much about drug dealers, but I was always under the impression that they were supposed to lay low and not tell people they were selling them. Between those things I could have made some calls and got the guy in trouble already. He did not really seem like a bad guy though, maybe just a bit of an idiot that thought getting rich quick was possible. One thing that did rub me the wrong way was how obviously jealous he was about the fact that I had a pool. He has on many occasions been caught trying to come over to my backyard in his trunks and swim in my pool. I usually tell him to get out and he always just goes back to his yard. Again, it did not seem worth it to ever call the police and deal with the hassle. He did not fight me or try and start any fights, he would just leave. Many times he asked me if he could use my pool for a party he was hosting, and I always gave him a swift and firm no. He never pushed it either, so I could not get a read on what kind of guy he was, besides wanting to just get rich without working hard. I went away on a weekend trip to go and visit my son because his wife had just given birth. I was not worried about my property because it was a decent neighborhood and I had cameras installed in case anything went wrong. My son helped me set the whole thing up and even hooked it up to an app on my phone that would show me if there was anything crazy going on. The last night of my visit, my phone alerted me that there was motion detected in the backyard. I had this go off before and assumed it was another raccoon. Instead though, I saw a neighbor and a bunch of strangers throwing a crazy pool party when I was out of town. I could not really do anything about it and I did not want to call the police because I knew he would claim he had permission and I was not there to defend my side of the story. I waited until I got back the next day and saw that my entire pool area was trashed. Empty beer bottles and drugs littered the ground. The water was a weird color that probably meant alcohol was spilled in it without a care. Cups, plates, even oddly some clothing was all over the place. I made a police report and sent them the footage of the entire party that I had on my phone so they could see the drugs and such. This was really the final straw with the neighbor and I was going to press charges on him for trespassing and destruction of property. He wanted to be rich, but after paying me to fix everything, I did not know if he would have much left. Since drugs were seen in the video, they got a warrant and found a ton of drugs in his house that they arrested him for too. Along with another charge for intent to sell the drugs to other people, I think the trespassing was the smallest thing on his mind after that, but I did not forget. I decided to make a call to the IRS and let them know that neighbor had been bragging about his business getting away without paying any taxes and they should look into that. Now he had them on his back as well, and my favorite part of the story is about to come up. Basically, what happened to a guy who had this many people coming after him with all of these crimes, I'm going to break it down for you and start with the drug charges since they were the most serious. He had no way to defend himself because the evidence was literally in his house and he was found guilty of that. They also found him guilty of trespassing due to the video. Now, the damages that I was asking for had to be done separately since it was not criminal behavior. After seeing the video and more detailed pictures I took of the aftermath, they said that he was going to have to pay me the money to drain and refill my pool and clean the surrounding area. The exact amount for that is not known yet because we are still working out those fine details. Now we come to the part where the IRS is coming after the neighbor and his business that was found to not have paid taxes since the business started 5 years ago. He actually did something worse than simply not paying his taxes. I guess he was worried about getting caught by just doing it that way, so instead he was writing off all his business taxes by making large donations to charity. Looking into that charity though only found it going into another business account in his name that seemed to only be getting those large donations to get the first one out of paying taxes. It was a really bad plan and they saw through it right away. His business got shut down and his license to start another business was probably never going to happen. I was not told how long, but due to all the charges, he was going to have to spend some time in jail. Now, the guy that wanted to get rich without working and stealing my pool is poor and in jail. I'm not saying that he should have lived his life the way I did at all. I am saying though that if you try to get a lot of money by doing shady and illegal things, you should not be surprised at possibly ending up in jail. Maybe he will learn a thing or two and come out as a better person. And yeah, ripe stars, if you have enjoyed the stories until here, I would really appreciate it if you could also like the video and maybe even subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because that would help me tremendously. Thank you so much in advance. And the next one is titled Revenge on My Coworker. Have you ever had revenge on a coworker? Well, I did because he tried to screw me over in the worst possible way. Let me tell you how it went. I went to work recently and I had a really hard night. I work in a very demanding industry with the general public. At work, sometimes people are very difficult, and that particular night I was assaulted by a guest. It was a very difficult night and ended with a police response which was humiliating to me that I needed help from an armed officer. I was embarrassed about it. When it was all said and done, I clocked out and I left work, and when I got to the transit center, I went to check my phone for the first time so I could see how long my wait would be. I discovered my phone was gone and I was upset because I knew I had to get back to the facility to search for it with some OPS guy who would need to bring a flashlight so we could look into some nook and cranny. That took over an hour. After not finding it, as it wasn't turned in at command or in our office, I left. I traveled home and was very disappointed. I had gotten my ass kicked and then somehow my phone came up missing. I then retraced my steps and realized that the last time I remembered having my phone was in the employee area prior to clocking out, so it hit me that my phone had come up missing from an employee-only area, as staff have a separate entrance from guests. I then felt pissed off and determined. It hit me that after I got beat up at work by some person, one of my coworkers ripped me off. I regretted not installing a phone tracking app in my phone. It was a cheap phone, but it was mine and it was full of my contacts and login access and banking info, etc. It had pictures of the baby. I wanted it back. Not having it was going to make my life harder. At that point it hit me that all the apps in my phone were probably tracking my phone, and so I wondered if there was any way I could track the phone from my laptop at home. After an hour or so of research and reading and trying various tracking methods, I discovered that my Google account was logged in on both devices, so I could open the Google account on my laptop and go in and see the location of the other devices logged into my Google account. To my surprise, the locator showed a pin on an apartment building not too far from me, less than a mile away to be exact. I felt adrenaline, I felt exhilarated, I was determined to get my phone back. I called the police and was told they could not deal with it until business hours the next day. I then waited until the crack of dawn and went over to this nearby building where I had tracked my phone to. After business hours started to then check it out. It was a fourplex apartment building, very small. A lady saw me looking in at the mailbox and she came out to talk to me. I told her I was looking for the employee of a certain facility that lived there, and she confirmed that someone who works at our facility did live there. She asked me why I didn't know their name, and I said I was there tracking my phone that they had. She immediately perked up and was in a hurry to take me up there. She gave me the vibe that she didn't care for that tenant and was more than happy to help. So I went up and called the police from the welcome mat of the apartment my phone was in to let them know that I had arrived as advised. I made the call very loudly so the phone thief would hear and know that they were cornered. I was putting the pressure on, a little leverage. The door to the apartment behind me opened up then and the thief's neighbor peered out at me curiously. I smiled and said, "Hey, I work at X facility. Someone who works there stole my phone from the employees only lounge. I tracked it here with an app. Our facility is a little prestigious and my job kind of comes with some swag." So this lady smiled this small smile and she looked almost smug and she then nodded at me and said, "Alright," and closed the door quietly and with a smirk. I had a feeling she did not like the neighbor either. Then I applied more pressure. I knocked on the door about 20 times loudly. I shouted that I was an employee of X facility and that another employee had stolen my phone, but I had tracked it there and the neighbors had confirmed that an employee of the facility lived there in that unit and the cops were on the way, so sent it out already. The door swung open and a strange older woman I had never seen before came to the door and handed it out to me. She looked scared and angry. I had a feeling that she was not the thief but that they lived with her. She had a pissed off mom vibe. I went down and told the woman who helped me and brought me in that I had gotten my phone back. I thanked her and then left. Then on the way out, I photographed all the names on the mailbox for that unit. It was a fourplex and one unit was vacant, so I had managed to inform both the phone thief's neighbors that they were a dishonest neighbor, and I could tell too that there was pleasure for them in my revenge. It was a loud, bold revenge. On the way home, I felt pretty satisfied with myself. I was savoring my victory, my housemates were very impressed, and I had used a tracker to find my phone and taken it back from the thief while bringing them a public shaming. Then I sent a note to my accounts manager and HR describing the situation. Command knew I was searching for the phone when I left. OPS and security guys had tried to help me find it, so everyone knew it was missing. I told them I had evidence as to where the phone had been tracked to in my device location history, and then I sent the address of my coworker and a screenshot of all the names on the mailbox, one which looked familiar, as if I had seen it on a company badge. At that point, the next few times I worked, I waited until people were gathered around me in the employee locker room to tell my tale, telling each group of workers what happened and what I did about it, and then I told them to look out for that particular name on another coworker's badge. Everyone said, yeah, they had worked with someone with that name before. That's who stole my phone after I got beat up that night at work. Ha! Everyone laughed and laughed. I can only imagine that this thief will never steal another phone again, so long as they live, for fear that the owner will track them like a dog to take their property back and publicly shame them. I still smile to think about it. It was a revenge to savor. Disclaimer, I would not recommend that everyone try this when they lose their phones. To work in my facility you have to pass like 7 state, federal and corporate background checks, so I assumed the thief was harmless, but not all phone thieves are safe to confront, so don't try this at home. And you know, Ripe Stars, for some reason this story reminds me of a channel called Africa Avengers that I recently discovered on YouTube, and basically that channel is about a Korean guy working in African countries, and he shows how dangerous it is to basically use your phone in a car, because he has these situations where a friend of his has his phone pretty much hanging out the window, and in a matter of minutes people try to steal the phone out of his hands. I'm not exactly sure what the purpose of that channel is, but it is very entertaining. The next one is titled, I took my neighbor's property. Between our yard and his, there are bushes, both on my side and his side of the property line. Recently, the neighbor came to me and said he wanted me to remove the bushes and he owns that part. The reason is, on the map, the line was drawn with a marker, so 3 mm is equal to like 2 meters of ground. Actually, we never had an issue as there were bushes and it was just fine. So I told him that the 2 meters are equally split between us and I don't want to do anything. He insisted and said he will get an order. I told him for this he will need a measurement so we can just order the measurements and act accordingly. He refused, but since I did not want to have to argue, I ordered it anyway. It cost about 1000 euros. The measurements came back and concluded that the entire 2m are on my side. I told the neighbors this and said we could either keep everything as it is now or I could get an order from the council to claim my property. Of course, he said he wants to keep it as is, which I am fine with, but now I spent 1000 euros, so I asked him to pay half. But he refused, saying I ordered the measurements, but only because he was making an issue. So I responded by taking the measurements to the council and requesting an order. In my opinion, I offered many compromises, but he accepted none. My family thinks it is vengeful and I should have just kept the measures in case we need them in the future and sit on the costs. So guys, am I the butthole in this situation? To clarify, the order I was referring to from the council is a decree saying who can do what and where. So basically, that I own the property according to the measurements, provided no one has countermeasures within X weeks and that everyone else should go away. It's not an order to pay, for this I would have to go to the magistrate. Also, the a-holeness I'm referring to is extorting the neighbors for $500 in return for the land, which is ultra cheap by the way. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I would like to redirect this question to you. Do you think that OP is the butthole in this situation or not? Let us know what you think in the comments, and a user in the comments said the following. Not the a-hole, never start a fight, but when the fight comes to you, finish it. I think you should do it considering the long run. Both properties are likely to outlast all of you, so for the sake of future owners, including your descendants, it may be wise to settle this once and for all when you have the opportunity. Another person said, no, full NTA, the neighbor could have failed to have the bushes annexed to his property. OP was effectively offering to sell that property to his neighbor for $500, and that is fair. When the neighbor declined, OP chose to protect their assets and acted accordingly. At no point was OP an a-hole. This is also a well-established case law as well. And the next one is titled, Awful Florida HOA threatens nurse with $1,000 fine over quarantine RV in driveway. We figured the HOA would be more lenient as the community is all pulling together, Lynn Belson told a news station. Unfortunately, that is not how homeowners associations work. Belson, a clinical nurse coordinator, lives in the Magnolia Point Golf and Country Club subdivision in Green Cove Springs, Florida. However, Magnolia's Point's HOA took issue with her family's plan to keep themselves safe during the virus pandemic. The HOA threatened to fine the family as much as $1,000 for keeping an RV in their driveway that they planned to use in case any member of the family needed to go into quarantine. The RV was not just a big paranoia pot either, as 3 members of Belson's family have good reason to be extra careful right now. Belson told a news station that she works for a major hospital group in the Jacksonville area that has to bear the flood of virus-19 patients. Her husband works for the Department of Defense and has to keep coming into work as he has been designated as essential personnel at an area base. They have a special needs daughter at home and keeping her safe during this pandemic is a priority. Belson has so far been able to work from home, managing staff, patients and calls for the system. However, as the pandemic worsens, Belson says she has been working around the clock and expects to be called into work at the hospital soon to relieve other staff members who are fatigued or who catch the virus themselves. So the family brought their RV home and parked it in their circular driveway just in case one of the two parents needed to quarantine themselves for a while. It has its own kitchen, bedroom and bathroom, making it ideal for such a purpose. Sounds reasonable, right? It makes so much common sense that the Magnolia Point HOA stepped in to do what HOAs do best: threaten to fine her for every day the RV remained on her property. They had a big discussion via the board without speaking to us and decided that we needed to remove our RV or we would be charged $100 a day, up to $1,000 if we left it here, Belson told a news station. The HOA did not even have the balls to notify the family about these fines in person. They initially left a copy of the Homeowners Association rules with the section on parking and storage circle taped to the RV. The family fired back with a note of their own on the RV addressed to the busybody who came on our property to post HOA guidelines on our RV during this pandemic. Accurate description, 10 out of 10, nailed it. Belson maintains that this strict enforcement is absolutely unnecessary right now and told a news station that the Homeowners Association president refused to even negotiate with her on the subject. Larry Henline, who serves as the president of the Magnolia Point Community Association's board of directors, defended their hardline decision in an email to a news station quoted by the station in part. The owners in this case, one who is a nurse and currently working at home and the other who works at a local military base, are neither infected with the virus, nor have they been directed by authorities to self-quarantine. Hence, they have no immediate or justifiable need to keep an RV at their residence. The owners made no attempt to contact the association, register the RV at the front gate to obtain a standard 48-hour pass or subsequent extensions to keep the RV on site beyond the normal 48-hour limit. The requirement to register RVs, boats and trailers has been a long-standing rule of the association for many years. For the record, I received a phone call from the Belsons and listened to their argument to keep their RV at home. I assured them that if they needed to self-quarantine, we would support them in the safest way possible, including parking their RV in the driveway. We have a number of residents who work in the medical field and not one of them has signaled a need to keep an RV at their residence just in case. Nor has there been a public call to provide RVs for the purpose of quarantining individuals outside of direct hospital care. The HOA board's position is simple. We will support and accommodate to the maximum extent possible any valid need and will organize community support for any resident or family that falls prey to the virus or other emergent need to provide any and all assistance desired. MPCA holds in the highest regard law enforcement, first responders, our military, and all medical professionals who place themselves at greater risk to take care of the rest of us should we ever need medical assistance. It is worth noting that the news station that initially reported the story says that they sent an email to the HOA board and called 3 different phone numbers for HOA board contacts before publishing the initial report on Tuesday, and they only received an email back after it started to go viral. Internet viral, not, you know. Belson responded to Henline's statement in her own email to a news station where she called BS on how much the HOA allegedly cares about her and her family. We understand the normal HOA rules, we are not dense. However, we are cognizant of current events around the world and in our community and really thought that common sense and compassion would prevail. We were mistaken. At no time did he, Henline, ever tell us that the RV would be accepted even if I should become infected. Because I asked if preparing ahead of time was not acceptable, were we supposed to then, after becoming exposed, take the exposed person and a non-exposed person to pick up the RV and get it set up after exposure/infection? He told me no, because you can only have it here for 48 hours. She also noted that the 48-hour rule for RVs has never been strictly enforced in the past. In the several times we have brought our RV through the gate to load/unload at our house for less than a 48-hour period, not once has the guard gate inquired, asked about or issued an RV pass. If it was strictly enforced, why not? Belson wrote to a news station. Gee, it's like HOA's reputation for making arbitrary and nonsensical policy enforcement decisions is warranted or something. The RV has since moved back to a storage facility in order to avoid the fines, but just think of the pettiness involved here. We are in the midst of the worst pandemic in over a century, and the HOA is more concerned about keeping up appearances. Who cares? The time will come when I will probably need to isolate myself, she told the news station. It did not seem they were concerned about our health concerns or our jobs as essential personnel, she continued. The one silver lining is that at least other people care. Several readers and viewers offered to pay the fine so the Belson family could keep the RV at their home. And guys, in my opinion, it's absolutely outrageous that the HOA seemingly does not give a crap about medical personnel, even amidst a pandemic as the one that we are having right now. If you are new to my channel, I'm curious, have you ever lived under an HOA? Let us know about your experiences in the comments.